The Giants and Cowboys meet on Thanksgiving. Which one of these reeling franchises will get a win in prime time? We'll debate that and more on this crossover edition of the Locked On Giants and Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Giants and Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today on this crossover edition is Patricia Traina from Locked On New York Giants. You can make sure you follow her on Twitter at Patricia_Traina. And Patricia, let's start with the Giants because both of these teams are not having the ideal season. But can you kind of summarize just how bad things are in New York right now?
I can. I don't know if there's a nice word to say it. It's been garbage. It's been trash. Yeah. I mean, one thing after another, and some of the decisions that have been made. And I go back to the quarterback decision, not that they signed Daniel Jones to the contract that they did. I understand why they did that. But what I did not understand is why after last year, and I get it, he got hurt, but he didn't look good really, except for two quarters of play against the Arizona Cardinals. Why not have a competition? Is it because you're paying him all this money and you figure, oh, we'll give him another opportunity? That kind of irked me because I'm thinking they could have maybe had Russell Wilson. Maybe the season wouldn't have gone off the rails if they had had a legitimate competition. That's one thing. You throw in the injuries. Andrew Thomas is injured again. That was a big loss because now they had to scramble to figure out what they were going to do on that offensive line. And they had right tackles playing left tackle, and it just wasn't very good. Which, by the way, they still have that situation going on. And the defense can't stop a cold, let alone the run. So I'm starting to have doubts about Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator. It's just been one disaster after another. And Marcus, this is the 100th anniversary of the New York Giants. This by far has got to be one of their worst, if not the worst seasons that they've had.
I've got a ton of questions for you. I don't know how we're going to fit all this in the next 5 or 6 minutes, but I wanted to ask you about Brian Daboll. How safe do you think his job is? Because I know you've been tweeting about this the last couple of days that it feels like he's starting to lose the locker room, whether that's the comments that Malik Neighbors made this week or Dexter Lawrence made last week about Daniel Jones getting benched and then released. Do you think he's the head coach in 2025?
If you'd asked me that a couple of weeks ago, I would have said he probably has a 90% chance or better of sticking around. I'm dropping that number. There have been too many mistakes, too many, clinging to stubbornness with how how the team gets prepared every summer going into the season, why they come out flat 2 years in a row. There's just been, the players speaking up, like you mentioned. Okay, Malik Neighbors doesn't say what he says if, all is right in the world, right? Dexter Lawrence doesn't say what he said if all is right in the world. And the same goes for the other guys, Jermaine Illuminor, who also said, questioned some of the effort. Brian Burns, who had used a 3-letter word that I don't think I can say on the program to describe the effort. So, what's that old saying? Where there's smoke, there's fire. And you've got enough guys now that are just popping off in their own little way. And I didn't even include Darius Slayton, who kind of popped off a little bit. And I get it. There's some frustration. But if all's right in the world, you don't see that.
And we're going to talk about the Cowboys in a little bit. But even during this losing streak, there's been a lot of frustrations. There's no doubt. But one thing you've noticed is that this team has played really hard. And I think you can say whatever you want about Mike McCarthy, but that's one of his endearing traits is that his team is playing hard. And I think maybe against Tampa Bay last week, you can question some of the effort level. I want to ask you about the long-term outlook of the Giants. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel, or are you just Are you in a dark place with this Giants team? That's really what I'm asking you right now, Patricia.
Well, I mean, you could look at the light at the end of the tunnel as they're getting a new quarterback, whether that's a bridge quarterback or a
It's true.
franchise quarterback. That's something to look forward to, I'm
Do you,
sure.
do you think? Let me rephrase this. Do you think the team is headed in the right direction with the ownership and the GM right now, or is this? Or are you waiting for a change up at top?
I think the GM is okay. Not great. I wouldn't put him up for, executive of the year, but I understand what he's doing and how he's trying to get there. Now, do I agree with everything he's done? No. But I would say the amount of things that he's done that I disagree with probably are, not as much as what I've agreed with his decisions. I think the coaching staff is where you got to really take focus on because look, like I said before, these players are speaking out and they're getting frustrated. And it's to the point where, why am I putting my body through this every week if, this doesn't, if these results aren't better? And, you look at Dable, he was supposed to be this offensive guru, this quarterback whisperer,
Hmm.
and the offense was worse than it was under Mike Kafka. And he's stubborn. He wants to hold on to the play calling when, Daniel Jones had his best year under Kafka calling plays. I mean, just so many questions that I have. So I do think the coaching staff, I don't feel that I think they're on quicksand right now. Before I said loose concrete or semi-solid concrete, I'm going to put them on quicksand right now.
I want to ask you about the defense before we move on, because I know when I was kind of like just doing a lot of my prep for the NFL season, and you look at the defensive line of the Giants again on paper with Dexter Lawrence, who we've talked about a lot whenever you and I got together. How much I love Dexter Lawrence. I was so mad that he was not an All-Pro last year. It still irks me to this day. But you draft Kayvon Thibodeau inside the top 7 picks. You trade for Brian Burns. You have Azeez Ojulari, who's now on IR. And you look at like, how is this team not going to get like 70 sacks with their defensive line? And it just felt like this was going to be, a top 10, top 12 unit. Why hasn't that been the case this year?
I question whether Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator, I question whether his scheme really fits what the Giants have. This was a concern I had when they hired him. A lot of those players, if you think about it, that were already in place before Brian Burns came along, they were specific to what Wink Martindale wanted for his scheme. And Wink Martindale's scheme and Shane Bowen's scheme could not be more different if you tried.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden you've got guys that maybe were studs in Wink Martindale's system that are struggling in Bowen's system. And I'm going to point to 2. Bobby Okereke. He was a tackling machine.
It's
He
fantastic
was
last year.
yeah, he was amazing last year. Has he been amazing this year? There are times when you can tell he looks, if you watch the film, you say, my gosh, he looks like he doesn't know whether to attack, to drop back. He looks confused out there. Another guy I'll give you, Deonte Banks. He was drafted as a press corner, a press man coverage guy. What do they have him doing most of the time in the scheme? Zone. And he gets lost in zone. So this is what I mean. Coaches will say, oh, players are interchangeable. Oh, it doesn't matter the scheme. We can adapt. No. We are seeing that is not the case.
Last question before we move on to the Cowboys. Who's the quarterback in 2025? Just off the top of your head, give me the name of the week 1 starter for the New York Giants in 2025.
I think it's going to be a bridge guy, at least until the rookie is ready. I would like to see them. If I had my druthers, and this is no disrespect to the other quarterbacks, but I like Shedeur Sanders.
Yes.
If they got Shedeur Sanders,
I hope that doesn't happen, by the way. But yes,
I would be very, very happy. I would. I don't know that they're going to pick him, but I would be thrilled.
But you
That
think
said,
it's going to be a bridge quarterback?
I think what they want to do is they want to have a bridge guy until the rookie is ready. So even if they draft Shedeur Sanders or any rookie quarterback, they're going to probably have a young veteran, maybe, I don't know, maybe they bring in Will Levis, or I don't know, take your pick, Justin Fields,
Sure.
just to kind of fill the gap there until the rookie that, assuming that they're going to draft, is ready to go, because that's what they did. If you remember, with Eli Manning back in 2004, boy, do I wish we had those days again.
It's Kurt
They
Warner,
brought
right?
Kurt Warner,
Yeah.
right? Kurt Warner was the bridge guy. Eli sat until he was ready. And then I think about the 9th game into that season, Eli took over. Kurt Warner took a seat very graciously. And the rest is history, as we know.
Let's hope it's not Shedeur Sanders for my sake. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys, who are also a mess right now. Can they get another NFC East win on Thursday? We'll break that down next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest odds. You can check out the stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. This is a great week to check out all of the lines and odds on FanDuel. We've got 3 games on Thanksgiving. We got a Black Friday game between the Raiders and Chiefs. We've got some awesome primetime games in week 13. Week 13 is always my favorite week of the year. So go to FanDuel.com and never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Giants podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Patricia, let's talk about the Cowboys a little bit, who another disaster season in all the time that I've been covering the Cowboys here for the Locked On Podcast Network, which I think this is like my 7th or 8th season. This has easily been the hardest. We didn't expect the Cowboys to be as good as they were last year. I think a lot of people expected them to be a wild card team, be the 6th or 7th seed, but their defense was horrible out of the gate. They've had injuries galore on both sides of the ball. Now Dak Prescott's out for the year. They got blown out by the Texans and the Eagles. And then what do you know? They go on the road and they beat the Washington Commanders as a double-digit road underdog. Now the question is, how many more wins can this Cowboys team get? And what's the ceiling for this team? We know it's not a playoff team, but is this a team that could get to 7 or 8 wins with a pretty favorable schedule? I don't know, but you look at who's potentially not playing for the Giants on Thursday, and it does feel like this is a game that should be winnable for Dallas. What do you think?
I think it should be. I know Dallas is winless at home this year. I know there's some questions. Yeah. Well, listen, the Giants are winless too, so don't feel so bad.
Okay.
But you know what? Dallas is getting back some guys healthy, which I think you can look forward to, especially on defense. I mean, they have a very good defense. I mentioned the Giants' problems at offensive tackle. They've got, basically they've got a right tackle, and no disrespect to Jermaine Illuminor, who I absolutely adore, but he is a right tackle. And he's over there playing left tackle, and it's not quite as easy. And he said that would be the case. He actually
seems like he's banged up as well.
And he's banged up, so we don't even know if he's going to play. I mean, so you've got him, who plays if he doesn't go? And then Evan Neal is banged up, although I think Evan Neal is going to play. So now you're potentially looking at maybe Tyree Phillips, who just basically signed off the street a couple of weeks ago. Could you be looking at Chris Hubbard, who's a career right tackle, and who, when they put him at left tackle, he struggled. Yeah. So, there are question marks. And, Dallas, could they win this game? Absolutely. Matter of fact, I'm going to pick them to win this game. And you know me, Marcus, I'm the only NFC East team I've been nice to is the Commanders, and that's going to stop. So David Harrison, if you're watching,
we're done with that as well. So here, it's really funny. The Cowboys have this weird thing going on where a lot of their fans want them to tank is the wrong word, right? But they would like to see them get a high draft pick. And however they get that draft pick, so be it, right? I think a lot of Cowboy fans would love to see them earn a top 5 and maybe even a top 3 pick, because they believe that's the fastest way to getting the Cowboys back into contention, right? Like if you're able to draft, let's say, a Travis Hunter and now you've got another star on your team. That's how you go toe to toe with the Eagles. So I think there were Cowboy fans last week that were legitimately upset that their team won a game, which I understand. I don't agree with it. But I understand that philosophy, and I'm genuinely curious to see what happens this week against the Giants. Like, are the diehard Cowboy fans and the ones that cover this team, are they going to be rooting for the Giants to win on Thursday? Do they want to see the Cowboys win another ugly game with Cooper Rush? I don't know, but it's just, I can't explain it, Patricia, but it's this really weird dynamic going on with the Cowboys. And I think what makes it even more complicated is that you're not tanking for a quarterback, right? Because I think it makes even more sense to tank for a quarterback when you don't have one.
Mhm.
And I think it makes sense to tank when you have your established head coach, right? But with Mike McCarthy in the final year of his deal, he obviously wants to win as many of these games. It's just a really weird phenomenon going on with the Cowboys and their fans right now.
Yeah, especially the fact that you guys, that Jerry Jones allowed Mike McCarthy to go into this season as lame duck. It's like, most teams don't do that. But I got to be honest with you, I haven't quite understood half the moves that the Cowboys have made this year. And I'm going to go back to free agency
Mm-hmm.
when supposedly, Jerry Jones said, "Oh, we're all in." And what did they do exactly? I mean, I just don't understand how they built this roster, and
Can I clarify the all-in statement just for
yeah,
maybe the listeners
please,
that
please
don't know?
do.
Um, First of all, most of the time when Jerry Jones speaks, just don't listen to him and you'll be better off, just to be clear. But when Jerry said he's all in with this team, what he meant is he's all in with this version of the team, right? Like, he wanted to give the guys that were on the roster the chance to go out and prove that they can get over the hump. He wasn't going to throw any more good money at this team. He wanted to see what this version of the team could do. So that's why he tried to bring back as many guys as he could, but they didn't really go out and get any outside free agents other than Eric Kendricks and Ezekiel Elliott. It was, hey, let's go all in with Mike McCarthy in the last year of his deal. Let's go all in with these guys. And then if it doesn't work, we'll make big changes in 2025. And you're seeing it's not working. It didn't work. But my concern here is Patricia, is that Mike McCarthy, with this easy schedule coming up, and let's call this Giants game a quote unquote easy game. You win this game, you beat the Panthers in a couple of weeks, you beat the Bengals, and you get to 7 or 8 wins. And Mike McCarthy comes back in 2025. Then I don't understand the plan, because it seems like we're just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the future holds for them, but you have an opportunity here. If Mike McCarthy can't get you over the hump, and he's tried, but it just hasn't happened. So has it been him? Has it been the quarterback? What has it been? Well, now you don't have Dak Prescott, so now you're going to find out if it's been the quarterback or has it been the head coach. So I think that maybe factors into the equation. But yeah, it's very interesting. Very few teams can do it the way Washington did it. Washington
Yep.
came in, new ownership, new head coach, new GM, new quarterback. Everything was brand new and everything can kind of grow together. And the problem you see around the league, and this, and I mentioned this, I'm thinking about the Giants as well, is these teams do these piecemeal. And I get it, free agency and the draft, you can't get everything you need in one offseason, but the really good teams will they'll prioritize and they'll take care of the top needs. And I don't know if you could say the Cowboys did it. I know the Giants certainly didn't. And here we are, two teams that you thought were
Yep.
going to do a lot better this year are fighting for last place in the division.
One last note that I just want to give some of the Locked On listeners. Mike Zimmer challenged Micah Parsons last week. He said, yes, we're probably not going to make the playoffs, but go be the leader on this defense that it desperately needs, and go try to win games by the defense alone. And we saw against Washington, like, they allowed 9 points in the first 55 minutes of that game before it got really wild. Like, Micah Parsons and the defense stepped up, and you mentioned it at the top of the show. They're starting to get some guys back on that side of the ball. I'm curious to see, against a banged up Giants offense that we don't even know who's going to be playing quarterback for New York, can they do it again this week? We shall see. Let's go ahead and break down some keys to victories for the Cowboys and the Giants going into week 13. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I absolutely love Game Time. It's the only ticketing app that I use when I want to go see my favorite teams play. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. There are so many great things about Game Time that I can't even mention them all here, but one of my favorites is that you're going to get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. I know when I go to games and I'm not covering that I just want to sit and watch as a fan. I generally like to sit in the end zone, but I don't want to sit where the goalposts are blocking my vision either. So you go in the app, you can see exactly what the field is going to look like, what your view is going to look like before you buy. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. It's a crossover Thursday edition of the Locked On Giants and Locked On Cowboys podcast. Patricia Traina and Marcus Mosher breaking down this Thanksgiving game. Is this the second year in a row the Cowboys and Giants have played on Thanksgiving, Patricia? That's right.
I don't think so.
Well, we played Washington last year, right? Was
Yeah, I
the
think, but a couple years ago, I think the
Yeah.
Giants and the Cowboys were on Thanksgiving, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
I forgot there was a gap year in there.
Yeah.
You're right. All right, let's talk about the keys to victory. What do the Giants need to do to steal this win in Dallas?
Well, it would help if they got the ball to Malik Neighbors. And I'm talking about early on because, look, the kid's right. He's a playmaker. Why would you not put the ball in his hands? I mean, I get it. The Giants didn't have a lot of plays on offense last week. I get it. Tommy DeVito was under pressure, but you got to make more of an effort, I think, to try and get the ball into his hands. So I would start there. I would obviously, depending on who the quarterback is, I think they're going to start off with the run. Because if I remember correctly, the Cowboys' run defense is maybe not as I don't think it's the top 10. Yeah.
It's
I was
bad.
trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're fine. It's not very good.
Yes, it's not very good. So, maybe get Tyrone Tracy going. And this is what they tried to do, the Giants last week. They tried to get the run, loosen things up, open up the pass. The problem is the offensive line didn't hold up. So, you talk about keys, the offensive line's got to do its job because right now it's just, you never know what you're going to get with them. And then, on the other side of the ball, you got the run defense, which I mentioned can't catch a cold, let alone a running back. And you guys have Rico
Dowdle, who's actually playing really well the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I'm concerned about that matchup because this run defense, like I said, especially on the edges, just can't seem to stop anything. Yeah. So I think if they can, stop the run, which is a tall order, protect the quarterback. I know this sounds, basic, but this is what it comes down to. And then, force I guess Cooper Rush is going to play. I don't know. I know he's
banged up, but he's going to play. Yes.
Okay. And force Cooper Rush to make a few mistakes. Maybe the Giants sneak by with a win. I'm not counting on it, but look, maybe it happens.
Well, and the thing, whenever you have backup quarterbacks in the game, there's a lot of randomness that can happen, right? You get more fluky things that happen, tip passes, drop snaps. We've seen Cooper Rush now drop a snap in 3 straight games. He gets the ball tipped at the line of scrimmage a lot. So again, all that kind of stuff is way more likelier to happen when you have a backup in the game. For Dallas, the key to victory is as soon as number 97, Dexter Lawrence, gets off the bus, you need to double team him. You need to have 2 guys blocking him on every single snap. And even then, that might not be enough because we've seen him all year long. I mean, teams are just doubling him at an absolutely absurd rate. And sometimes it still doesn't matter because he can be that good. The game that he had against Pittsburgh earlier this year didn't have a sack. One of the most dominant games you'll ever see from a defensive tackle. So if you can maintain him or try to control him a little bit and slow him down, I do think the Cowboys can run the ball. And Patricia, you're right. Like Dallas has run the ball better in the last couple of weeks. If they can run the ball with Rico Dowdle and eliminate Cooper Rush having to throw the ball 30, 40, 55 times like he did against Houston, they're going to have a shot in this game. But to me, the big key is Micah Parsons. When Micah plays well, this team has a chance in every game. He was all over the field last week against Jaden Daniels, and it's why Washington did next to nothing in the first half of this game. If he can rattle who's ever at quarterback, if they can line him up over whoever's at left tackle, whoever's at right tackle, and if he can take over this game, I do think the Cowboys are going to be able to win.
Yeah, I'm concerned about, like I said, the offense, the Giants offense, the worst in the league right now. I mean, they can't score worth a dime. They get down to the red zone fine, but they can't get it in. And part of the problem, I think, is the play calling. I mean, if you're calling slow developing plays inside the 20, I mean, come on. Especially when you've got speedsters and guys who can get open, and you're calling these long runs against athletic defenses, such as what they're going to face with Dallas. So, there's just so many things the Giants have to overcome for this one. And I just don't know that they can. I just think, at this point,
well, let me give you an area where the Cowboys are going to struggle in this game. According to Pro Football Focus, they are the league's worst tackling team, and if you watch them on Sundays, you'll see why. Like they are not a good tackling team. So what has me nervous is the quick slants to Malik Neighbors, the bubble screens to Wan'Dale Robinson, Tyrone Tracy getting to the second level, because all three of those players are fantastic when you get them in open space. So all it takes in some of these games is one missed tackle, and all of a sudden it's 7-0, right? And when you have a quarterback like Cooper Rush and you don't have the firepower to get back in these games, it's really important to keep the scoring down. So anytime those guys get the ball on the move, I'm going to be nervous.
I mean, it's a saving grace for the Giants, but again, the flip side of that is Tyrone Tracy's got to hold on to the ball. The ball security by the Giants running back this year has been terrible. And not just Tracy, Singletary and Eric Gray. So, you can't make mistakes. You can't shoot yourself in the foot. And that's what the Giants have done. They get things going. They get a drive all the way down to the 5-yard line, and boom, what happens? They turn it over, or they get a penalty, or they do, so I don't know. It's just, I fear that this game should be one of the marquee games of the year. And it's basically, I fear it's going to be a slop fest. Which team is going to be the sloppiest, and that's the team that's going to lose. And, I'll tell you what, though, if the Giants can pull off a win, and they haven't won in Dallas for a long time, I think it's like 7 games or something like that since they've last won in Dallas. So if they can pull off a win, then, great. Maybe that'll pick everybody's spirits up. But if they don't, it's going to be another long 10 days for the land of the Giants.
I miss the days when the Cowboys and Giants games used to have juice to them, right? Like, I mean, obviously this game doesn't have juice because it's the 4-7 Cowboys against the 2-9 Giants, right? Like these are two non-playoff teams, but whenever you're in a big prime time stage like this, and everybody's going to be sitting around watching this game, you want it to mean something, right? And you want it to have the feeling of a big game. And unfortunately, Patricia, like, that's just not the case here.
It's not, because there's really the only thing that's at stake, if you want to, is pride, and we hear that all the time when a team is their season's winding down and they don't have a very good record. Oh, we're playing for pride. Well, why weren't you playing for pride earlier? That's my response to that. So, look, I don't mean to be a downer. I know I've been kind of sour on this episode because it's just been that kind of week, that the last 2 weeks really. But, I would say this to the Giant fans who are watching. If nothing else, this is a good opportunity to continue to look at the younger players, see what they bring to the table. And you can make the same argument for the Cowboys as well.
Absolutely.
Look at the young talent. Because, as you start to formulate the needs, maybe somebody steps up that you weren't counting on had the circumstances been different with the record. So, that's what I'd be looking for if I were, a Giant fan.
Last thing before we go, I remember in 2010, Tony Romo got hurt into, I think it was week 6. The Cowboys were 1-5 at the time. And that season they were terrible. One of the things that we were looking for was a rookie Dez Bryant. What could he potentially do? And I remember they went to New York and John Kitna was the quarterback, and Dez Bryant had a huge game, and the Cowboys ended up beating the Giants as big underdogs. if you're a Giants fan, I think you're looking for the same thing. Can this be the game that Malik Neighbors takes over and has his version of like that Randy Moss 1998 game? Probably not, but I think it's at least worth watching here on Thursday afternoon. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making this crossover edition of the Locked On Giants and Locked On Cowboys podcast your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Patricia on Twitter at Patricia_Traina. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and we will see you back here on Friday.